So with oversight throughout research, ideation, and creative, our next guest maintains the strategic vision and creative direction for clients of Skidmore Studios. While strategy can be purely functional, Kasha makes it personal. His greatest strength is his ability to truly emphasize with the end customer and quickly identify that one thing that can create an emotional connection. He has helped brand the strategic vision and bring it to life for brands including American Express, Visa, Ford, Chrysler, Universal Orlando, the Tigers, Zenith, Rock. The list goes on and on. So here to talk about the power of disco, dance with me. Please welcome the Executive Creative Director of Skidmore Studios, Mr. Katja Azima.
Hi. I don't care what you think. I don't care. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you think. I mean, that's not something we say very often, right? Let me give you some context. We're all creatives, so we have clients of some sort, right? And that's not something we typically say because of the nature of our work, because of the nature of what we do. Hang on, let's see, who do we have? Are you guys like all internal creatives with internal clients? Yes? Everybody? Anybody have external clients? A couple of you have external clients as well, okay. So I want you to imagine this for a second. I want you to picture yourself. You and your team have worked hard and you've put the pitch together, whatever it is that you put together. You've done this work and this project and you've assembled your best creative and you come to the presentation and you get in front of your clients and you reveal it and you go, here it is and it's awesome and I don't care what you think. How many of you think that that's a reasonable thing that's going to come out of your mouth? 2. That's good. Out of 135, we're like 1%. So like 1% of us think that this is something that we could and should say. I think that we're missing something. We have an opportunity to push our own creative way farther by being able to say, I don't care what you think. That's the power of disco. The power of disco is being able to say, it doesn't matter what you think, it doesn't matter what I think, because that's not what's important here. So, lest I sound like a hypocrite, I say this to my clients often, and I have an account manager right here from Skidmore who can validate. Do I say this to clients? I say this to clients. I say this to prospects, people we want to do business with. I say, listen, I don't care what you think, because it's not about what you think, it's not about what I think. It's not about what your opinion is, what you believe is important. I don't care if you think it should be blue or I think it should be blue or yellow or polka dots or squares or whatever. What matters is the end user, the person who's going to receive this piece of communication. What matters is the consumer, the person who's going to participate with this creative and engage with it in some way. That's what matters to them, not what matters to me and what matters to you. And that's the power of disco. That's what I want to talk about today. How do we use disco or discovery? How do we use discovery, understanding our clients' clients, the end consumer, the end user, understanding them so well, their needs, their pains, their priorities, that we lose ourselves in them. And I mean we, like the collective we, like me and my client and the people that we're working with and the team that's assembled. We're going to lose ourselves, immerse ourselves in that audience. So we go, you know what? We're making decisions for these people, not because I think it should be blue, not because you think it should be blue, but because it's right for these people. We're here to do what's right. Do you guys want to come in? Yeah, okay. Time out. Ladies and gentlemen, the latecomers. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, so that's the setup. Quick background. I work at Skidmore Studio. We are a design studio, focuses on brand strategy and design for companies that are in the business of food and fun, which is really great, and a niche that we picked very intentionally because it means that there's always food in the office. I rarely have to pack a lunch. The only bad part is we do a lot of packaged food clients, so you have to check the expiration date before you pick up something to decide to eat it or not for lunch, which is, you have to be careful about that. And then fun clients, oh, I'm sorry. We work with clients like Universal Orlando. So research is going to Universal Orlando and riding, roller coasters and drinking butterbeer and hanging out with Harry Potter. That's why we picked food and fun. They're right below us, Skidmore Studio. And what happens often is when you guys are having events up here is we think, what the hell is going on up there? Because there's so much noise. So if you would do me a favor and just all stomp on the floor really loudly right now. Yes. They're all like, what is he doing up there right now? I get to go down and talk about that. So at Skidmore, we attack our work really trying to make sure that we put the right people at the front of it. There's three kind of phases of this conversation today. First, I want to talk about what disco is, just define that so we can kind of all get on the same page. Secondly, I want to tell you some good disco stories. And then thirdly, I want to leave you with some how-tos and some tips and tricks, so it's not just me talking, but like you can actually go out and implement this tomorrow. So cool, that's the roadmap where we're headed. Let's talk about, design thinking is how we approach our work at Skidmore. If you Google that right now, and like a bunch of you have your laptops up and your phones out, you're going to find a dozen different frameworks for design thinking. Some of those frameworks are going to be 2 steps and 10 steps and 12 steps and 7 steps and whatever. Design thinking for us is very simple. At the heart of it, it's about being human-centered. Everything that we do is about the person who's going to be receiving and participating, engaging in this piece of creative or engaging in this experience, this activity, whatever it is. There's a really easy framework for that. Let me walk you through it. For us, it's about discovery, strategy, and creative. So first, we start with discovery, making sure that we walk the moccasin mile. The American Indians had a great expression, you never really know a man until you've walked a mile in his moccasins, which, when you think about it, is completely gross, sticking your foot inside of a sweaty moccasin and then walking around in that. But when you think about that, it's completely immersive. Like, oh, now I get what that person's life is like because I feel these leather soles on the ground that they walk on, and I've walked where they've walked and I've stood where they stood. After we do good discovery, which is what we're going to talk about today, good disco, we move into strategy, which for us is to solve the real problem for real people. I like that this conversation had something around, what is the real problem? Oftentimes our clients are coming to us with a problem, and we have to reframe that problem for them, because in discovery we figure out what you thought was going on isn't what was really going on. Like you said you had a headache, we should take the tumor out, but you just need an aspirin. It's not like a whole thing. And then finally, after we go through discovery, we create strong strategies, and we move into the creative. And for us, the creative is we move fast and work together. This is where we bring our clients into the sandbox with us. We are not like, we're going to do this over here, and then we're going to bring it to you 3 months later and hope that you like it. No, we're going to work with you step by step, each step of the way, and participate with our clients in solving that problem, that human-centered problem, and really getting to great creative. That's our framework. The way we go through it, just asking ourselves 3 key questions. This is kind of the framework for today. I want you to remember these things. We're going to reference them a lot today. The first one is, who are we? And I'm saying we now, like me and the client, like if we're working together, we're a we. It's not me working for you, it's us on the same team. So what are we representing? What is this organization? Who are these people? What do they feel and think? And how do we make sure we're an accurate, authentic representation of them? We move from who are we into who are we talking to? Again, being human-centered. Who's the audience at the end of the day? And then finally, if we've very clearly understood who we are, we've clearly understood who we're talking to, then we can just move into, okay, great, how might we engage them? Now we have a framework and bumpers. Now the creativity can spin, and we can get really good ideas, and we can have a good time. That's the framework. It's not that complicated. It's pretty simple. Ultimately, I think of it as a great divide. And on the one side, we have us, and on the other side, we have our audience. And our job as creatives, it's so great to address a room full of creatives. Our job as creatives, simply figure out how do we cross that divide? How do we build the right bridge? And that's what I want to start with at the beginning is, what is the right bridge? Because it doesn't matter what you think the bridge should be, or what you think the bridge should be, or if you think it should be a tunnel. What's right for crossing that chasm, crossing that divide, and getting where we need to go? All right, let's get into some disco stories. Hang on a second. I want to start off with a story from Nike. I use Nike because we didn't do it, but I wish we did. It's easy to understand. Everybody's familiar with it. It all gives us good context. These guys did some great discovery that led to some really innovative ideas. Now, they do a lot of innovative stuff, but I really love this one. So if you remember back to the London 2012 Olympic Games, so this is about 6 years ago now, the Summer Olympics, and Nike had an opportunity. They were the apparel sponsor, so they're going to be on everybody's apparel, which typically means they get to dress the athletes in the, the country colors. It gets a little Nike swoosh on it. The footwear matches the outfit. Everything kind of coordinates together, right? So that was fine and dandy, but they had an opportunity to also participate as the named Olympic sponsor, sports sponsor of the game, because they only, let one sponsor at a time. The price tag for that was $150 million. So Nike said, I'll pass, thank you. I mean, we're going to be in the games already. We're going to, we're dressing the athletes. So I don't think we need to spend another $150 million to pay to be the sponsor and then spend all the money for the advertising on top of it. So then they got to thinking, and their global creative director, Martin Lottie, started thinking about what could we do with who we are in order to create an impact at these Olympic Games, really use this as a branding and marketing moment beyond just like the get-up that everybody has on during the games. So they started thinking about it and going through the questions. Who are we? Who are we talking to? How might we engage them? And the key question here is, who are we? And they got back to, well, what we are is shoes. I mean, we're footwear. Like, that's our thing. Like, okay, so what do we do with footwear to like really bring it to life? So they started asking athletes, like, didn't have an end goal or end objective. They just started talking to them like, okay, well, what do you think about your footwear? What do you think about it when you're getting ready for competition? What's your competition ritual? Yada, yada, yada. And getting a lot of just gathering stories and collecting, doing a good, solid disco of what's really going on, not knowing how to solve the problem, which is the key insight here. Like, don't solve the problem. Just ask a bunch of questions. And it'll come to you when you ask the right people, the end people, the audience that you're trying to get the answer from. Well, they got a really cool insight from Maria Sharapova, tennis star, and she said, quote, "When I look better, I play better." Okay. When I look better, I play better. Well, what makes you look better? Well, they started asking these questions to more and more athletes and realized that if I look better, I feel better. If I feel better, I play better. My performance is actually improved by how I look. And because top-level athletes are naturally somewhat egotistical, looking better to them is standing out. They have some edge visually that they feel like is different and unique than anybody else on the playing field. So Nike started driving out, well, okay, what could we do with our shoes that makes things different and visually unique, and started messing with color and pushing the color on the shoes and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it until they found literally the most visible color to the human eye, which they called Volt Green. And they made every freaking shoe in the Olympic Games Volt Green. Every shoe on every athlete was Volt Green. This is a way to not spend $150 million and slap your logo on top of the games like Adidas did. This is a way to use design thinking, being human-centered, doing a good disco, and getting yourself immersed in the games themselves. The cool part is, when you've got a shoe on every athlete in every sport, in every game, ultimately what happens is you become the brand of winning, which is not the brand that Adidas got to be. Adidas got to be the brand of advertisements. Now, the interesting thing is, the guy on the far right, anybody recognize him? Who is that? Michael Phelps. How often does he wear shoes when he competes? Is what happens when you do a good disco. You get people who don't have anything to do with your product and anything to do with you becoming passionate advocates and fans. Now, sure, there's some contractual obligation that he had to wear those shoes, granted. But ultimately, this is the new brand for the new athlete, the brand of winning. Cool story. I'm going to bring this a little bit closer to home. Let's talk about football for a second. You guys know Zenith here? We're one of the FOC. Have any Zenith people in the house? I got one. Connor. All right, great. Connor's here. Connor knows this story. So Zenith came to Skidmore middle of last year. And they said, listen, we need to create a new brand. We're pretty sure it's stale and it needs to move forward, and we got to do some things with it. So we started asking a bunch of questions and discovered that for them, there were some key things going on. There's new leadership, so new CEO, new CMO. Most of the key leadership team had been there for about 2 years or less. So new vision for the company, expanded vision for the company. They had a growing product portfolio. They were doing just helmets, but they had expanded into shoulder pads and core guards and other pieces. And then they wanted to expand even further than that, expand outside of football. The competition was vulnerable in football. The competition was very staid and stale, and we just kept doing the same things. There was an opportunity to push the brand past the competition very quickly. The market was ready for change because the distribution channels were all through distributors rather than direct to consumer. They felt like there was an opportunity to move to consumer. And then finally, the customers were highly aware of safety as an issue in football with all of our CTE and our head trauma and that NFL conversation. So the brand needed to be pushed, and needed to be pushed somewhere great and somewhere exciting. So we asked the questions: who are we? Who are we talking to? How might we engage them? And the interesting angle here was, who are we talking to? Because for Zenith, it was really convoluted. There was athletes, there was parents, and there was team buyers. So for Zenith, you've got athletes, the people who are actually wearing the helmet. They don't actually buy the product. So the brand that you're creating is for an end user who has no purchase power on the product, because either they're purchased by their parents or it's purchased by the school or the athletic department or the coach. Now the parents is a completely different audience, because they don't care about things that the athlete cares about, the fit or the comfort or the style. They care about the safety. Like, is it going to keep my kid's head safe? And then the coach or the team buyer, completely different audience, completely different set of factors as well. Yes, it has to keep my players safe. Yes, it has to fit them well. But it's a value thing, man. I got to buy 60 or 100 or 50 helmets at a time. I got to be able to afford these things. So now we have to create a brand for a bunch of audiences that have nothing to do with each other, which actually have competing priorities. We brought the Zenith team in through multiple sessions, working with them, working through each audience one by one. We had done a bunch of focus groups, a bunch of conversations. We had attended a bunch of football events, sat down with athletes, sat down with coaches, sat down with parents. We're bringing all this stuff to life to ourselves and to the Zenith team, and realizing that, there's only one way to build a brand that actually succeeds. We have to do it from the ground up. Because if we focus on the parents, it's just a safety message, which is boring to everybody else and doesn't create a compelling brand. If we focus on the team buyers, it's just a value message. Nobody builds a brand on value. That's awful. So if we could focus on the athletes and build it from the ground up and drive and generate demand from the bottom, there's going to be success there. So develop this character called the new jock. So it's a young man or a young woman, 16 years old, committed to their sport. Now the new jock is different from the old jock, because when I was younger, the old jock was like jock nerd. It was binary world. Like, you were either a jock or you were a nerd. And all of us, creatives, and some of us probably threw a football or two. The new jock is not that. The new jock is very open-minded, diverse in their thinking, very accepting. This is a very Gen Z audience. The world is a wholly different place, wholly open and accepting universe to them. So the new jock has some interesting characteristics that we had to lean into. So first off, we had to flip the script, because when we talked to them, Zenith used to talk to them this way. They led with a technology story. Our technology is really great. You should get into it, and it's really going to protect you. Go down to a safety story, and then ultimately, yeah, it fits well, which is part of the technology, is how the chin cup and the cinch around the occipital lobe and how it works, and it feels good when it's on you, but yeah, it's stylish. That was how Zenith had been talking about themselves, and it wasn't getting good play, especially not with the athletes, because when we talked to the athletes, they said, that's not what matters to us. What matters to us is first fit and feel, because I will drop a brand that I am wearing right now in a heartbeat if you give me another product that fits or feels better. Because ultimately, just like Maria Sharapova said, if I look good, I feel good. If I feel good, I play good. If I play good, I'm going to win. I got to have the good fit and feel. So we flip the script. We lead now with fit, feel, and style. Again, that look good. And we put at the end the safety and technology. It's not to brush that under the rug and say it's not important. It's to say that for this audience, when we've done a good disco and we really understand from a human-centered perspective who we're talking to and what's important to them, we can totally transform how we communicate a brand and create a winning brand for that group. Another thing we found out from about them is sports have always spoken the language of culture. We went back 100 years of sports branding and marketing and looked at early part of the 20th century, sports brands communicated on product features, because that was the way the world communicated at the time. What are the specs and the features of this elixir that I was going to drink that was going to cure my ails, or this soft helmet that I was going to put on for these early football games? Mid-century, sports brands spoke very idealistically. It was the ideal athlete. It was the ideal experience. It's the Leave It to Beaver version of sports and sports marketing, because that was the language of culture at the time. You move forward even further into late 20th century, the 70s, 80s, 90s, it became about the professional athletes, because now we had cameras where we could capture professional athletes in play and put them in advertisements, and that was really compelling, because now I could see myself as that professional athlete. The language of culture. We're looking up to our icons, looking up to our heroes. And then finally, in the late part of the 20th century, beginning of this century, this shifted to the individual. And now if you think about any sports marketing from Nike or Under Armour or any of these guys, it's about the individual athlete, the no name. It could be anybody, because it's about celebrating who the individual is and what they're all about. So we need to create a brand that speaks to that language, that speaks to enabling that individual. And then finally, the third insight is, these are Gen Z kids. They have never known a world without a cell phone in their hand, without the ability to broadcast and communicate themselves to tens of thousands or millions of people at the same time. They have more capability in their pocket than a major corporation did 50 years ago. And there's 70 million of these guys and gals running around, broadcasting themselves all the time. So we have to create a brand that works within the individualization of culture and that works for them as an individual, so they can broadcast themselves as unique examples of that brand. So we started putting this together. If we enable the athlete's pursuit in training, playing, and living, if that's our core purpose and the focus of how we're putting everything together, we're going to start to gain some traction. Really important that that's training, playing, and living, because this isn't just about the playing moment. This is about all the preparation leading up to it, and how is the brand a part of that. The playing the actual game, which is a small part of the experience. And then the living afterwards, what is just the post-game experience, just life, going through high school, going through college, just being who I am and having a sports brand that I wear, just that I'm a part of. Exploration, exploration, exploration. You guys are familiar with this world. Where you start just putting stuff on paper, and we've talked a bunch about this, like, oh, these guys were great. Like, iteration, when do you know when to take the roast out of the oven? Yes. And when do you know to keep pushing, and how do you push back on your creative directors? Yes, you should do all those things. Push on yourselves and push on all those people. For us, we started crafting a brand that was first and foremost really aggressive and bold, using a strong color choice. Who here would start at the beginning of a project and pick yellow for a football brand, for a sports brand? I don't think anybody. It wasn't where we were going to start, but using good disco and understanding this was going to set apart, and this was going to allow athletes to create a statement for themselves. Pairing it with a really strong word mark, this technically crafted, almost carved Zenith custom typeface, bringing some boldness and some attitude and some confidence to it, and then pushing it even further with the X mark. It's got some swagger, it has some authenticity, just some raw energy to it. It's just bold, and it pushes, and it wants to be emotional, it wants to get in your face, and it wants to be expressive. Kept driving it through website, apparel, product materials, and keeping it going. This is where it gets really interesting. Part of the work from our creative team was just concepting what this could look like in apparel, and especially what it could look like right here. This is just tape that's wrapped around a hockey stick. Zenith is not a hockey brand. Zenith has nothing to do with hockey, but this captivated the Zenith team so much. So you're like, wow, wait a second, that's really cool. That takes this brand excitement of enabling the athlete's pursuit and training, playing, and living, and giving them something they can do something with. And then they started to use it in their brand videos. And they manufactured this tape so that athletes could tape up their wrists and tape up their ankles. And it's created a whole new product line for them of apparel and wearables that they never had envisioned at the beginning of the project, because we had done good disco and we had figured out, hey, you know what? If we focus on the athlete first, we can create a really great brand that represents them as individuals that they can use to push forward in their world. All right, really quickly, last one. We're going to talk about food. Another story completely. We had a client, the food distributor, and they realized that all they were doing is distributing food from manufacturers to grocers. And their independent grocers were complaining that they couldn't bring organics lines into their independent grocery stores because the organics lines are too expensive. And they couldn't compete with Meijer and Kroger. So I love this story. LaPerry is the name of the distributor. LaPerry decided, well, we could create our own organics line by white labeling all of these great brands that are creating these organic foods right now under one brand, under one label, and we could give these to independent grocers so that they could retain the customers that they have. They're losing to Meijer and Kroger and Walmart to get these other organic brands because shoppers want organic products right now. So this is what they started as, and when they came to us, they said, don't touch it. The name's fine, the logo's fine, the packaging's fine. We just need a brand story. I said, okay, can we not touch it? They said, yeah, you can't touch it. Don't even, literally, they said, don't even think about it. Okay, we won't think about it. We did. We started looking with them as we were creating the brand story and asking the questions. And the third question is the most important here. How might we engage the audience? What's going on right now in the organic scene is this kind of an engagement. It's very craft paper, hand-scripted type, we call it crunchy granola downstairs. It's just got that feel to it. But on the other side of the aisle, you've got these fresh and interesting brands, bold type, bold flat color, a lot of strong shapes, really pops off of the shelf. So this is the world that people are walking into, and we have an audience that is being neglected by organic food brands. Organic food brands are a lot of fear-based marketing. Oh, don't put that into your body. It's going to rot you from the inside. Cheeseburgers are bad. But for people who want an affordable quality organic food to fuel their active lifestyle, think your young moms, your active lifestyle people, your busy professionals, people like us. We don't need some hoity-toity, highfalutin organic brand that's unapproachable. We need a brand that's just simple and works with our life. So we started building brand pillars for them. The brand pillars of, okay, we're going to create a brand for you guys that's active and easy and everyday, a personality that's positive, very approachable, very spunky, really kind of step in front of all the other organics brands that are out there. Now, just to cut right to the end of the story really quickly, ultimately, as we went through this disco, we kind of opened their minds and they're like, okay, you can touch the logo. Don't touch anything else. Okay, so we worked on the logo, and this is where it turned out. We had to keep the name. We got this fresh, bold stamp of a logo, this clean sans serif, nice, simple, bold, bright color. Began to evolve that, push that even further into what does the palette look like? And then they're like, guys, the packaging sucks. We're like, yeah, I know. We should do the packaging. They're like, yeah, you should. And it's 180 products that's going to be throughout the grocery store. So we started creating packaging concepting for them, playing off both sides of the shelf, both the organic side as well as the bold, fresh brand side. You can see how it begins to look even into these salad dressings, and this is where specific strategies come into play, where winning the aisle is a moment that has to happen for every single product. So what happens in salad dressing isn't the same thing that happens in fresh pasta or in dry pasta, because the look is different in each moment in each aisle. And then this is my personal favorite right now is the butters. These just came out last week, meaning came out of our shop. They're not in production yet. They'll be hitting stores in a couple of months. Love these butters because when you go to the peanut butter aisle, you're competing against Jif. And that's just a bold, simple, iconic look. You got to do something different. You got to speak organic and speak fresh at the same time. By doing good disco, we're able to get them to a place of going, don't touch it, to this is great and we love it. And we love it too. We think it's awesome. All right, guys. If you can skip past this and get to this, then anybody can do it, especially when a client says, don't touch it, it's absolutely forbidden. We're not going there. Let me give you some tips and tricks about how to throw your own disco, all right? Everybody get out your phones and take a picture of this screen. I know you're scribbling madly. Just take your phone out. First, slow down to speed up. This comes from Kira. Kira is our producer, and her message to you is don't rush into the work, and that's my message to you as well. Don't rush into it. You get the assignment, slow down. Do a good disco, figure out who are we talking to, how might we engage them. Then start your work. Your work's gonna be a lot faster. You slow down first. Secondly, define the audience. Human-centered. Who are you talking to? Who is that audience really? Not loose, 25 to 55-year-old white man. No, specifically, it's a guy named Kasha. He likes to surf. He wears denim. He has a hat on. Like specific, define the audience. Feel their problem. Walk the moccasin mile. Understand what their problem is. Know their experience. If you feel their problem, that's one thing. You got to take a step over and actually know their experience. What is that experience like when they're standing in the aisle going, peanut butter, which one do I want? Like, what are they thinking in that moment? Like, know that. And finally, get buy-in. This is you to your creative director and you to the person you're pitching internally. You need to get buy-in on the disco, not buy-in on the creative. Leave the creative at home. Bring the disco with you and go, hey, we've learned some really cool things. We need to tell you about them. We need to get you on the same page. When you do that, then your client is like, great. It doesn't matter what I think. Doesn't matter what you think. It matters what's right for the audience. So get your buy-in. All right, we're going to do a quick exercise. I have 23 seconds, and I'm going to do it anyways. Because I want you to try out and feel what a discovery is like. All right, so everybody close your eyes. We're going to do a little imagination session. And we're going to work through a problem together, okay? Here's how it goes. I'm going to describe this scenario to you. There's a cabin in the woods. Everybody see the cabin in the woods? Good. 4 men are dead inside the cabin. It's snowy all around the cabin. There are no tracks leading either to or from the cabin. All right, how did they die? Open your eyes. We're going to figure out how they died. Because this is what discovery is about. You got a bunch of clues, and you're trying to figure out how to put them all together. Now, the way you figure this out is you ask me questions, and I can answer yes or no. I can't say anything more, so don't ask me why questions. That ain't going to work. So go ahead. Ask me questions. I'm going to try to get to the answer. Just shout them out.
Did they die at the same time?
Yes.
Did they die before it snowed?
Yes. Did they eat each other? No. Were they killed by their environment? No. Infectious disease? No, but that's good.
Are there any injuries?
Are there injuries? Yes, physical injuries.
Was it an accident?
See, this is what you're doing. Like, some of you guys are rushing to the conclusion. Is it an accident? Pick up the clues. More clues, more clues. Is the cabin intact? No.
Did they die in the cabin?
They died in the cabin, yes. No fire. Yes, they knew each other. This is good. Were they next to each other? Yes, very close. Were they sitting up? At one point, they were sitting up. Yeah. What? No, this is not another Saw movie. Although, yeah, that's a good idea. We should do that. All right. We're gonna come to the end here. When I said cabin in the woods, how many of you pictured this? Everybody? Right, okay. How many of you pictured this? All right. So this is the last of the tips I want to give you at the end, and then I'm done here. Again, take out your phone. Take a picture of this. Assume nothing. We all walked in assuming when I said cabin in the woods, what that was going to be. I remind myself of this every day. I learned that riddle when I was 16 years old on a school trip to Daytona Beach or to Walt Disney World for spring break at 2 in the morning on the bus trip. And a counselor was giving us this riddle to keep us occupied at 2 in the morning because we were bored on a bus. I think about this all the time. Every problem that comes to me, I'm thinking what the cabin already is, and I'm not asking, what is the cabin really? I think it's this, but it could be something else. Secondly, I don't know what I don't know, and that's okay. It's really okay to tell your clients and the people that you're working with, I don't know. I just don't know. That's why we're doing a discovery. The disco is about figuring these things out. Don't solve the problem. A lot of you guys were doing that when we were trying to figure out this cabin in the woods thing. You're trying to get right to the conclusion. Don't solve the problem. Ask a bunch of questions. And finally, empathy. It starts and ends with people. Ultimately, if you do all these things, then you get to arrive at this place where you say, I don't care what you think. And everybody's okay with that. Everybody wants to dance with you, and your work is 1,000 times better, and everybody's happier. So thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate the time.